Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hosts Melanie Johnson and Jen Foster are the owners of Elite Online Publishing. They're both Wall Street Journal, USA Today best-selling authors. We're really glad you're here because this podcast was designed for you. Meet industry experts that share their secrets and strategies. Get successful results for your business in money, relationships, health, and your life. Each episode is going to inspire you to take action towards reaching your greatness.
Hi, and welcome to another great show. We are here to inspire you, motivate you, and educate you in all different ways. So today we are going to talk about some really cool stuff to help you with your business, your marketing. But first, I want to introduce my business partner at Elite Online Publishing, Jenn Foster. Hey, Jen.
Hey everyone, how is it going today?
I'm having a fantastic day, and I hope you're having a fantastic day too, everybody. So listen, we're about story, right? Own a publishing company. We're about people sharing their stories, leaving a legacy, leaving the world a better place. And so we have a storyteller here today who talks about why storytelling is important, ways to tell stories for not just your personal brand, but your company, whether it's a solopreneur, big company, corporation trying to soften that big corporate feel, so to speak, and get you more softer and more of a personal relationship with someone. And we always believe how people get to know and trust you is through storytelling, especially your own stories. And the other caveat to this, which I love because Jen and I are really big on this, is repurposing your content. So we are huge on that. And Sarah Pagoose, I'm going to say it wrong. It's like caboose, but it's Pagoose, is with us today. And she is a master at this. So she is going to share with us her strategies and tips, not just on storytelling, but also on repurposing your content. Sarah, welcome for coming today.
Hey, thanks so much. And no worries on the name. It's Sarah Panus. You almost got
I wrote it down. I still didn't get it right. My mind was...
It's like one of those that doesn't sound like how it looks. So all good.
You can say it 3 times.
Yeah.
Sarah, tell us a little bit about how you got started in storytelling and repurposing and helping businesses.
Yeah, definitely. So my journey started a little over 20 years ago. And really what got me to where I am now is I was in a place of working for 20 years for other people, working on the corporate side and on the agency side, mainly on the corporate side, leading content marketing strategy and social and influencer marketing and all those things. And I was really at a point where I had seen and learned the benefit firsthand of how incredibly powerful storytelling is at driving results. And I was just craving more and more of that. And at the same time, I was also craving sanity in my life and making sure that I could help people, I could do great work, I could use my creativity, but also be there for my family. So I was at this crossroads a few years ago, and it was actually expedited by COVID, I would say, to where I am now. So 20 years working for others, like I said, and right before COVID hit, I actually started a side hustle, which is my current business, which is called Kindred Speak. It's a brand storytelling consulting company. And I had started as a side hustle because I talked with my employer. I worked for Sleep Number, which is a large billion-dollar sleep wellness retailer, and I was leading their content strategy for 12 years working there. And I was like, I love what I do, but creatively, I just want to work with other people too. I don't want to just stay here for the rest of my life. And they understood that. And so I had this whole game plan that I was going to start this side hustle and do some projects on the side and just to feed my creative juices. Well, COVID hit. And as it did for so many of us, created a lot of, oh my goodness, what is going on? I ended up being furloughed along with 40% of the company. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in on this side hustle idea. And instead of it as a side hustle, let's think of it as a full-time thing. And so that's what I did. And so after furlough ended, I was like, I don't want to go back full-time. I want to do this. I want to do consulting. So I'm a newer entrepreneur. I've been running my own business now for a little over 2 years and working with corporations and content marketing professionals who really want to connect with their audiences through brand storytelling and need help doing it better. And the big piece with me is it's doing work that you're really proud of, doing work that you feel good about, feeling like your work it matters because we all put so much time into our work, right? And at the end of the day, you just want to feel good about it. You want to feel recognized. You want to feel like confident and not overwhelmed and all the things. And so that's really what I do now and why I started my business. So I help the corporations I used to work inside of. Now I can help the people there. And then I also have some online courses to help teach and coach people how to do that. And it's a lot of what I talk about. I have my own podcast called Marketing with Empathy, where we talk about brand storytelling. And I have guests on from other brands that are doing brand storytelling really well, as well as sharing some of my own advice. So it's kind of like a nice little package where I always think COVID pushed me to get over the fear of jumping into my own business a lot faster, probably, than I would have done it on my own.
That happens. I love when your side hustle becomes your main hustle. That happened with Jenn and I too. It was this little side hustle and then turns into that. And you just need something to push you. It happened to a lot of people with COVID. It's okay, I can't go to my regular job, so I'm going to pivot and go here. And then it becomes your main gig. So I just love that, really respect that, and love that you've had such success over the last couple of years. So let's dive to the storytelling. And we find authors or even marketers or business owners, they get a little thrown off by the storytelling because part of it is being vulnerable, right? And how much do I say? What do I share? What do I not share? Do you have a formula? Like, what are the essentials to really telling story for social media and for your company?
Yeah. So I actually have a formula I've created called the F.E.D method, F.E.D. And so I can top line that. There's a lot of details into it that we can talk about later. But basically, this framework can help you figure out what the heck should I be talking about? And I think about it like just as human beings, we need 3 things to keep us alive and thriving. We need food, exercise, and sleep, right? So I think every good content marketing storytelling plan needs 3 things too. It needs F.E.D, which is focus, empathy, and data. So these things will help you figure out what it is that you should be talking about. So focus is top line level is where you want to think about what are like 3 brand storytelling pillars. What are storytelling pillars that matter to you that you want to talk about? And I always recommend having 3 is kind of like a nice number. You don't want to have more because it just gets overwhelming, and it gives you a nice variety. And I recommend the 3rd one's always a little bit of a wild card, and that's the nuance that's especially you. So a great example is for me, for my own business. My 3 storytelling pillars are content marketing, creativity, and then my 3rd one, which is my wild card, is child trafficking. So what does child trafficking have to do with me as a brand storytelling consultant? It's very unique to me because I actually donate a portion of all of my profits to this amazing nonprofit called International Justice Mission to fund child trafficking rescue missions. And it's something I'm very incredibly passionate about because I'm a mom. I have 2 kids myself, and just in my whole life, I've always been like, what can I do? How can I help? And more. And so when I started my own business, I was like, it's a no-brainer. I'm just going to be able to like donate and help fund these rescue missions. That's unique, right? To me, there's a lot of brand storytelling strategists. So when people are looking at which brand, which person they want to work with, there is a lot of that trust and relatability and who they're going to vibe with. And so that's me. And so that's an example. Or like with Sleep Number, when I was working there as a sleep wellness company, or mattress, bedding, things like that, their wild card was sleep science. And so generally in the mattress industry, there is not a lot of like science, but all of their beds are smart beds. There's all this technology. They're doing research collaborations with the Mayo Clinic and all these really cool things, right? So that's differentiating for them as a brand. So that's the first thing, is you really need to think about what are those 3 storytelling pillars. A great example is to think of yourself as a magazine. And if you were talking to somebody else, and you're like, oh yeah, I have this magazine and we talk about X, Y, and Z. That's how like focused you want to get, because then all future ideas need to ladder up into one of those 3 things. And if they don't do it, don't talk about it. It'll distract you. It'll be confusing to your audience, or tweak the idea until it does ladder back up into one of those umbrella pillars. So that's focus. And then empathy.
Like
thank you.
Think
and then empathy.
Oh, I was just going to say really quick before you go on to the next step is for our company, I would say we're probably 1, publishing, 2, marketing, and 3, we donate books to children through the Barbara Bush Foundation and the Dolly Parton Literacy Foundation. So for every author that we work with, we donate books to children so they can learn to read. So that's probably our differentiator, would you say? Or does it always have to be a charity, or is it something where you could add a totally different wild card?
Totally different wild card. Like Sleep Numbers was just sleep science, and that was the storytelling category. The biggest thing is when you think of a pillar, you need to make sure you'll have enough content underneath that umbrella. So if you kind of like just did a little mini brainstorm, you're like, oh, if my content is this, what kind of things could I talk about? And if you can only think of a couple, then it's probably not deep enough to actually be like an overarching.
Like you need more stories in that.
Yeah, it's more
Got
stories
it.
that kind of feed under that category. It's basically helps you stay in your lane and stay focused so that you're not confused. You have more sanity because you know what to talk about, what to create. And if people came at you with other ideas too, you can be like, no, that actually doesn't align to my pillars, but if we tweaked it this way, that actually would. So yeah, good. And then E stands for empathy filters. So empathy is a huge aspect of what I talk about. I have Marketing with Empathy in my podcast. We talk about it. Empathy is in its core is really about how you as a brand can connect heart to heart, mind to mind with your audience. So this dictates a lot of like your question of should you talk about that guideline? Well, you want to talk about what matters to you, but you more so than that, you want to talk about what matters to your audience and deliver it in the way that makes sense and is authentic for you to share that message. When it comes to empathy, what I talk about with empathy is I relate to cognitive empathy, which is literally just trying to be better communicators because it's the ability to understand how a person is feeling and what they might be thinking. And so it's not being mind readers. There's a lot of like outside factors and things that can come into play that help us just understand that. And so there's 4 different types of empathy filters that I love to lean in. One is data informed empathy. So this is just stats. This is if you have a fact and you know that 46% of your audience has high school aged kids living at home. Like that's a fact, right? But then you're like, oh, empathy moment. They're parents, they have teenagers, right? But that's a fact. Excuse me. The second type of empathy filter I talk about is SEO informed, so search engine optimization. Normally, SEO and empathy aren't in the same sentence, but I love SEO as like a great insight pool because I look at what people are typing into Google is a great insight. It's kind of like a giant focus group of what are questions, what are concerns, what are they looking for that you could help them with. And they're very honest because they're typing it into Google and it's not like they're in person telling you, might be filtering out their answers. And so SEO informed empathy is an example of where you would see, oh, there's a large volume of people that are searching for advice on how to talk to their teenagers. So suddenly we went from having these kids to now they want help knowing how to talk to them. That's like another empathy moment. And then the third, I call it human informed empathy. And this is like those shared experiences and feelings that we can relate to with each other. So shared feelings of how we relate to each other. So like my favorite one is like, for me, I always seem to pick out the slowest checkout line at the grocery store. Like, what is happening? How do I always get like the slowest checkout line? And so many people can relate to that because they're like, yes, me too. Or Spotify did an amazing content storytelling campaign around the fact that people will wait and not get out of their cars. If a really good song is playing, they'll wait until the song is done. So I had this really funny storytelling series around awkward moments that you should get out of your car, but you're not. And so it was really funny. My kids are not like, Mom, come on, we gotta go. And she's just rocking out to the song, or the pizza delivery guy pulls up and he's supposed to be delivering a pizza, but he's like in his car, not delivering. It was just really well executed. But that's like another moment people can be like, yeah, like you hear a good song, you don't want to get up. So that's human informed. And then the last one is nostalgia informed. So nostalgia is just an incredibly powerful empathy filter because these are like those key life moments and experiences that a group of people will go through together. So it could be something like right now where we've all gone through COVID and we've had some shared experiences around that, but it also can be just growing up in the same decade, having the same favorite toy growing up, or watching the same favorite cartoon, or having a band that you love. Like that's like nostalgia. It's why like on Netflix, we see so many of these comeback shows, Cobra Kai coming back after Karate Kid. And you're like, yeah, because that generation wants to see what's happened now in the future with the same cast that they were so passionate about back in the day. So those are some great types of like empathy filter moments just to culturally and just understand, get more in the mindset of your audience and maybe what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And then the last one is data is pretty beefy. So I'll summarize this really quick. But data is really where you put your content investigator hat on, as I call it. And you're going to look at both internal and external resources to understand what is the data showing you. So I love pairing focus, empathy, and data together, because where they intersect and where you start to see trends and similar things keep popping up, that's a real big like thing. Create content around that. So data can come from SEO, like I was sharing. If you have like customer like loyalty programs and you can poll your existing customer base, paid media insights, what's been working really well, what hasn't been working really well. If you have employee from them and what they're hearing, what they're feeling from the customers or what they themselves. Third-party research that you can just find online from other sources or you can purchase, right? There's a lot of different places you can look for this type of data. But yeah, so that's really going through all those things. So that's my really long answer to your question about how do you know what to write. I always say focus plus empathy plus data, and that's going to give you like the sweet spot of being right in line with yourself, but then also with what your audience is going through and thinking and feeling at that time.
Do you have that's like the crux of it? But then when you get into the actual story of it, it makes a compelling story, how to tell. So you're going to tell maybe a story that has empathy and that you're going to put data into it. How do you make it interesting and compelling to someone to want more from you?
Yeah, definitely. There's so many amazing storytellers out there. And I always say too, if you find some folks where you like their story, whether it's written or visual, keep like a file and save those too, so you can reverse engineer. What is it about this that I like? Because you can glean like things of how they're setting something up. So I'm not a writer. I do writing, but mostly I do strategy. And then I work with these amazing creators who do the writing. But the biggest thing I would say is to humanize the story. So that's the beauty of storytelling versus facts and figures alone. Like Stanford did a study that stories are 22 times more memorable than facts and figures alone. So when you're doing the story, humanize it. How do you do that? You share a personal story. If it's about you're going to share something. And some people are really uncomfortable sharing some things. It doesn't always have to be vulnerable and open and like you're letting them into like your diary, deep dark secrets. Yeah. It's literally just, what are those things that maybe you've experienced something or you've seen something, or you've heard something, or you saw someone, or you were reading something that day. You just have to bring yourself into it. Or if you're interviewing someone else and they're in the story, the big key is it's quotes, it's voices. It's not just a land educational story. You have to humanize it with that piece because people are going to remember it better. And it's going to make them kind of thumb stop on the digital content and actually want to watch it if there's a real person. And I think right now there's even more of a growing trend of realness. And it was like social, I feel like started with like realness and raw, nothing was pretty. And then it went into everything had to be like really pretty and perfect. And then now it's gone back into, it's like a blend of the two, but customers can tell if it's like fake. So don't worry about everything having to be perfect. Just be real, just share, talk like a human being, and then hit on those pieces throughout the story that are aligned to your storytelling pillar, that are tying into some type of an empathy filter. Like I always say with a story, ask the question, what's the empathy filter? Why is this going to connect heart to heart or mind to mind with my audience? And if you can't answer that, don't do the story. You need to figure that answer out first before you make it. It's Simon Sinek has the why, ask the question of the why. My version is ask the empathy filter. And that needs to be that connection point. Otherwise, a lot of people just create content for themselves, really. And it's like, I used to have an old boss and she had this funny saying, and she would say, we're talking to our belly buttons. And what she meant was we just got our head down and we're just talking to ourselves. We're not like thinking at all about our customer. And I just love that saying because it's true. And you don't want to be like that. So
you want to look up.
I would get is lead with real people, human quotes, people in the story.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're talking to your audience and not just to yourself, for sure. That
100%.
You talking about all these different ways to focus, empathy, data, all of that reminds me of a ad I saw for a social media company called Be Real, and it had all of those factors in it. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out on YouTube. But it's basically they're in like a heist type situation where they're robbing. And then all of a sudden the guy's like gets a notification on his phone that says it's time to be real. And Be Real is like an app, is like a social media platform where you take a picture of the front and back of what you're doing right now. So they're like all posing while they're in like a
I haven't seen that.
robbery. It's hilarious. So that just reminds me of that. Let's get into the repurposing stuff. So now we know how to tell stories and how to make sure we have the focus, the empathy, and the data. Now, how do we take these stories that we have created and the content that we've created, and how can we repurpose it and use it, like you were talking about earlier?
Oh, this is like one of my favorite things, because again, having worked 20 years for other people in large content teams and billion-dollar brands, all the way down to zero budgets and having to be super scrappy through the years, is most people don't repurpose their content enough. And what I mean by repurposing is like thinking about different ways you can share it, different times you can also share it. And so there's two main reasons that repurposing content is really important. One is it's going to give you more sanity. I'm a big fan of sanity because in my past career, I didn't have a lot of sanity. And so everything I do, I'm like, you need sanity, because you're going to be happier when you're sane, aren't you? So one, it's going to give you that sanity because you're not going to feel like you have to create everything from scratch and think of new ideas constantly, because who has time for that? I know that teams are really stretched thin, and a lot of people listening, you may be the only team, you're a team of one, right? So you're even more stretched thin and you're trying to do all the things. So it can be really overwhelming and confusing if you're approaching content and brand storytelling in that way. And then the second reason is it's going to help you drive better results, because repurposing content really does help your content get seen by more people, like more of your audience over time. And it's also valuable because it's helping the various communication channels. It's just not one and done. And it's also going to help you optimize like previous top performing content in different ways. The internet, as we all know, is a very busy place, and your brand, your company is competing for people's attention just like everyone else's, right? We, as whether we're solopreneurs or large business owners or something in between, are competing for attention with like huge, social platform publishers and media outlets and things. Now we're all publishers of content. Social has made that an option. And every hour there's just, you look up the stats and there's just so much happening and so much content that is published in like a minute, like every minute on the different channels. So you want to think about how to repurpose your content like a pro so that you work smarter and not harder. And basically what you want to do is you want to stretch it out, and I would say milk it for all it's worth. Okay. In its simplest form. So the first thing you want to do to repurpose content then is you want to map out first all the different channels and or partners that use and share content for your brand. So I call that your content ecosystem slide, just one slide to map out all the different places that content can live. It doesn't mean that every single piece of content is going to work for all those channels, but just make an outline of all the different channels, that both internally and externally, of the partners that you have. And that's really going to just become your blueprint that you can keep coming back to just to make sure you're not forgetting something. Okay. And then strategically, if you have other partners and teams or employees in these areas, then you want to make sure you're going to have conversations with all of those in advance. So this is part of the strategy perspective and creating allies, like who's going to be locking arms with you. And they're like, yeah, I want that content. I want to share that content. But you need to have those conversations, those strategic conversations first, because if you just create it and then hand it off to someone, they may not like it. They might be like, this is totally wrong for my channel. This doesn't work for this channel. We don't even need this. We have other things that we're creating. The timing is terrible. Right? There's so many different variables there. So you want to have those conversations first, understand their goals. So then that way you're also co-creating content in a way that makes sense for your business, for your brand, for your partners. So then, assuming you've done those two things, then it's time to repurpose. And like I said, what this means is literally taking one piece of content and repackaging it or editing it in different ways that's going to work across different channels. So I have 3 different examples I can share for common types of content I feel like that all businesses have. One is like a video. Okay. Let's say you have one video. That one video can be repurposed and made into 20 different pieces of content across all your channels over time. So I'll unpack like how that works. That video could be a long form video. It could be from a video shoot. It could be an animated video. I mean, like it can be any kind of video. Okay. But it needs to be a video. So with like lots of some details in it. So you have one video. So the benefit is you want to think from both an organic and a paid perspective, like in your ecosystem, and then you can think organic and paid here, like how that one video can be used in different places. So let's say that one video can then be made into one blog post, and the blog post can be optimized for SEO, lots more text, give some additional quotes and context and things, and the video gets embedded in that story. Then that blog post could then be sectioned out into, if Pinterest is a platform that you're interested in or whatever social channel, but let's say it could be made into 10 different pins for Pinterest, pulling quotes, headlines, subheads, like intriguing questions that the post will answer. You just create 10 different graphics, boom, 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 but they all link back to that blog story or to that video, right? And then you can also like take some of those multiple bits and that you maybe you've made for Pinterest and make that into social video. Like I say video in quotes because not shot video necessarily, but it could be like the visual, the static images made to move so it looks like a video, right? Or it could be sectioned out as a snippet from your long form video that is an actual social video. You add that to your YouTube channel, and then you think of what are cut downs that you could use from that for paid ads. Then you can also, if you have employees or partners, you think about sharing it with them. Okay. So on the internal side with employees, do you have an employee newsletter? Do you have a newsletter that you send out to your audience? How do you break out that video so it's like a little teaser? And then maybe you could add a poll to engage your employee base to ask them a question like, hey, what do you think about this? Or have you ever experienced, or fun facts behind the scenes of this shoot? If it's a tip, you can ask like what they would add to the list. It's a great way to think about how do you engage your audience. Like in a poll is such an easy way to do that with a piece of content. If you have influencers you're working with, asking them to share the content, but also like how do they package it up? And then they could add like a different take on it with a little blip. There's so many different ways, right? If you have content partners, taking that to inform like other snippets, or they're writing a story already, but maybe this could be one part of that story. Suddenly that's like a whole nother piece of content that they've created and yours is inserted into, and you're just working together on how to, again, milk this for all it's worth. So that's one example of a video and how that can really play out.
I love that. 20 pieces of content with one video.
Yep.
I think you had a little more than 20 there, but
I think I did too. I should actually count like how many I have with it, but at least 20 different pieces of content. And the thing is with that, it's all of those things can go live at launch. Or you could have some of them go live and you're seeing how it's performing. And if it's doing really well, then you just continue to optimize and tweak and push it. Or if it's a seasonal piece of content, then maybe you could bring it back the next year, that same season. If it's evergreen, you can space out and say, cool, this isn't related to videos, but this is related to like podcasts is a great example of how you can space it out. With my own podcast episodes, I actually continue to share one podcast episode for a solid 4 months. And I do that because I'll share it the heck out of it the week of launch. And then I'll wait 3 to 4 weeks later and I promote it again. And then 3 weeks later again, 3 weeks later again, et cetera. And then I do that 4 times essentially. So it gets over to 4 months. And because not everybody sees everything the first time you post it, your channel and your community is continuing to grow. So you're going to get new followers that totally missed everything you did before that. So by doing that, you're not sharing it too frequently back to back, but you're spacing it out in a way and you're talking about it a little bit different every time. And you have a little different graphic every single time. So it feels new and it's there for the people who missed it the first time you shared it or the third time you shared it. So that's what I mean. Keep milking it. Don't just assume everybody sees everything the first time you share it, because 100% they do not. Nobody ever sees everything the first time that you share it. So that's
to remind a lot of our authors that, because they'll look at their page and scroll, and then they'll say, oh, I don't like this, or I want that, or this different, or I want to delete that, or I want to add this. And I have to remind them, like, social media is in real time, and there's not that many people that actually go to your actual page and scroll through everything. Like they might go back 10 posts, but they're not going to go back. You're going back. That's you do that to yourself, but no one will ever do that. They're seeing stuff on their news feed. They're seeing stuff in real time. They're on Reels or they're on Facebook or they're just scrolling. Like most people are not typing in, and unless they're researching your company, but they're not going to go back more than 10 posts. because they don't
Yeah.
have time.
I know. And again, it's like, we love our own brands. We love our companies, right?
Yeah.
But everyone in our target audience isn't as passionate. And so we have to make it about them. And you have to just keep sharing it over time.
There's no reason to go back and delete something because you don't like it because it happened 2 years ago. No, that just lives there. That's a waste of time. You got to create new stuff. And I love how you said repost it every 3 weeks, post it for 4 months, because people don't know, and you get new followers and new everything, and even new clients and new employees. So they're going to be seeing stuff that, and if you just change up the image, I love that. I think that's really good.
It's key. Like, I clicked on articles before, like it came out and I'm like, no, I'm not interested in that, based on what the headline was, what they were saying. And I'm like, no, that doesn't really interest me. And then all of a sudden they send it to me again with another thing. Hey, we're going to talk about this. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know it talked about that. I want to learn about that. So then I click on it. So it's like having something different, either from your book or from the podcast, a different part of content, like even using this podcast as an example. Like, someone may say, I'm not really interested in storytelling. We might promote it with that. And then the next time it comes out, how do you repurpose your content? So that totally changes the conversation of what they might want to be interested in. And just the keys of, I think, of having that strategy of re-promoting, like Jenn said, having a thing of sending it out over and over again with those different things is really a big deal. I put a star by that.
Yes, good. 100%.
Yeah, I've been taking so many notes. You have so much great content. What's one last thing you can tell our audience before we let you go?
Yeah, definitely. So I would just say I have a freebie if this is interesting, where I do talk more about repurposing content. And I also talk about other things. I call it 3 ways to improve your content strategy this year. So if this is interesting and you want to get even more facts, I get more into repurposing content. I get into humanizing. And I also talk about creating a content advisory board. Like, essentially, how do you create like a team of advisors and allies that are going to help you grow your storytelling business and support you along the way. So I'll share the link with you guys, and you can drop that into the show notes for folks. And I would just highly encourage everyone, if this topic is interesting of storytelling as well, join me on over in Marketing with Empathy. I would love to have you over there too.
Sounds good.
The other big thing that I got out of this too is having content strategic partners that you share each other's content. I'm like, we talk about having strategic partners for your book launch, but doing it for your content, I think, is huge. We've never done that before. So I think that's a really good tip that you had there.
Yeah, because then you're helping each other, right? They probably need some more content too. Like, we all know what it's like sometimes. And so if you have some other things that fit into your storytelling pillars that others can share with you too, and you can cross promote, do it.
Yeah. And well, in the way social media is going now, there's so many tools now that you can co-create with the tagging. And I think there's even one that's co-sponsor plus stitches and all the different things. If you don't know what those are, just look them up.
Yes.
Creators. Yep. Check out her page, go there. And the other big thing that we do, that we stand on our platform for repurposing, is turning your content into a book. So blog posts, newsletters, storytelling, all of that, podcasts for sure. And we have a link in the show notes we'll put, if you're interested. We have a book called Podcast Authorized that tells you how to turn your podcast into a book and a book into a podcast. And we know Sarah's going to be checking that out because she has a podcast and can turn her content into a book. Thanks for joining us today. And remember to comment and share this podcast with anyone you think it'll be useful for. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.